I got home 2 hours early on a Tuesday in March because the framing crew got rained off the site, and that's the only reason I ever found any of this out. I still had my boots on when I came through the garage door, out of habit more than anything, so I didn't make much noise crossing the kitchen. Camilla's car was in the driveway, which surprised me, because she was supposed to be at a 4 o'clock spin class at the Y on Danforth. I figured she'd skipped it, maybe wasn't feeling well, and I was already halfway up the stairs to check on her when I heard her voice through the bedroom door, low and careful, the tone she uses when she thinks no one else in the house is listening. "Webster, I miss you so much. I think about you every single day." I stood on the third step from the top with one hand on the railing and didn't move for what felt like a long time but was probably 10 seconds. 3 years married, 6 years together before that, and I had never once heard that name inside our house. I didn't open the door. I don't know exactly why. Some part of me didn't want to know yet or wanted to hear more first, so I backed down the stairs as quiet as I'd come up, went back out through the garage and sat in my truck in the driveway for 20 minutes before I made myself go back inside like I'd just gotten home. She met me in the kitchen with a normal hello and asked how the job went. I told her it got rained out. She said that was too bad, we could use a night in, and started pulling chicken out of the fridge to thaw. I watched her face while she said it, and there was nothing there. No guilt, no flinch, which somehow made it worse. I want to be clear that Camilla and I don't have a bad marriage. We built our house on Marchwood together. We split the bills fair. She remembers my mother's medication schedule better than I do. That's part of why the name sat in my chest for the rest of that night like something swallowed the wrong way. I didn't say anything. I told myself I needed more before I opened my mouth because if I was wrong, I'd never live it down, and if I was right, I wanted to know exactly what I was dealing with first. Over the next 9 days, I started noticing things I'd been walking past for months. A charge on the joint card for a coffee shop on Elm called Rosati's, $4 and change, twice a week, always between 2 and 4 in the afternoon, always on days she told me she had errands. A contact in her phone saved as just the letter W, no last name, no photo. A locked notes app on her home screen that I'd never once seen her open in front of me, sitting right next to the calculator like it had always been there. I asked her straight out one night how her day was, and she said quiet, ran to the pharmacy and Target, nothing exciting. I'd driven past Rosati's on my own lunch break that day and seen her car parked out front at 2:15. I didn't say anything about it, I just filed it away. I told my buddy Clovis about all of it over beers that Friday, mostly because I needed to say it out loud to somebody who wasn't going to look at me different afterward. He's known Camilla almost as long as I have, since he stood up at our wedding. He didn't tell me to calm down or that I was probably overreacting. He asked me one question. He asked what I'd do if it turned out to be nothing and I'd gone digging behind her back to find out. I told him I'd rather know and be wrong than not know and be right. He didn't argue with that. He just said, "Whatever you find, don't act on it the same night you find it." I didn't listen to that part. That Sunday, she fell asleep before me, which she almost never does, and I used her thumb on the lock screen while she was out to get into the phone. I want to own that part plainly. I wasn't proud of it while I was doing it, and I'm not proud of it now, but I did it anyway. The Notes app had 4 months of entries going back to November, not diary entries exactly, more like a log. Dates, times, what they'd talked about, how he was doing at his job stocking shelves at a hardware store, a line about him starting an associate's degree program in the fall. One entry said he asked about his dad today, if I remembered what he looked like. Mixed in with the notes were texts between her and her best friend Deneen, and the first one that stopped me cold said, "Don't say anything to Kay yet, I want to tell him myself when I'm ready." Kay is me. I didn't wake her up. I lay there until it started getting light outside, and I made a decision I still go back and forth on. I decided I wasn't going to ask her about it directly, because I was scared that if I gave her the chance to explain first, I'd talk myself into believing whatever she said, true or not. I wanted to see it with my own eyes before anyone got the chance to soften it for me. She told me Tuesday she had yoga at 11 and errands after, home by 3. I called in sick to a job I was supposed to be running that day and drove past Rosati's around 1:30. Her car was in the lot. I parked 2 spots down and sat there for 6 or 7 minutes before I went in, and I still don't have a good answer for why I didn't just leave and go home and ask her about it like a normal person. She was at a table near the window with a young guy, maybe 18 or 19, dark hair, sitting across from her with a laptop half open between them. The second I got a look at the side of his face, I felt something in my chest come loose, some belief about my own marriage that I'd been standing on without ever checking if it was solid. I walked straight over. I didn't plan what I was going to say. What came out was loud, louder than I meant it to be. Something like, "Who is this and how long has this been going on?" And 2 tables of strangers turned to look at us. Camilla's face went white and then red in about 2 seconds. She stood up so fast her chair scraped back and hit the wall, and she said my name in a voice I'd never heard from her before, somewhere between furious and pleading. "The kid, Webster, just sat there looking between the two of us like he didn't know whether to stand up to or stay out of it entirely. Camilla told me to sit down. I didn't. She told me again, quieter this time, and something about how tired she sounded made me actually do it. She told me Webster is her son. She had him when she was 17, before we ever met, back when she was living with her parents in Cedar Rapids. She said her mother and father gave her 2 options that year, and neither one was keeping him and staying under their roof, so she spent the last 4 months of the pregnancy staying with her Aunt Norma 2 towns over, and placed him for adoption through a Catholic Charities program the week after he was born. She said she thought about him every year on his birthday for 18 years and never once told me because it all happened before she knew me, and she didn't see the point in reopening something that felt closed for good. She said Webster found her 4 months ago through one of those ancestry and DNA sites, the kind people use to find out where their family came from, and he'd sent her a message through it, and she'd said yes to meeting him before she'd had time to think about what saying yes was going to mean for the rest of her life, including for us. I asked her why she never told me any of it. Not that she'd had a son at 17, not that he'd found her, none of it. She looked over at Webster like she wished he didn't have to hear this part, then looked back at me and said, "Do you remember 5 years ago when Clovis's co-worker had that paternity thing going around the shop, and you said if a woman ever hid a kid from you, you didn't know if you could trust her the same way again?" I didn't remember saying it. I believe I did. It sounds exactly like something I'd have said back then, mouthing off over a beer about somebody else's mess, with no idea it would ever come back around to me. She said she'd carried that sentence for years without meaning to, and when Webster found her, that was the first thing that landed in her head before anything else, before joy or fear or anything, just that sentence, sitting there waiting. She said she wanted something steady with him first before she brought it to me, because if she told me too early and it fell apart, or if I reacted badly, she was scared she'd lose the chance to have any relationship with her own son over something that happened when she was still basically a kid herself. Deneen had known the whole time. Camilla needed someone to talk to who wasn't me, and Deneen used to work weekend shifts near the courthouse and helped her track down the old adoption paperwork to prove to Webster who she really was. Webster finally spoke up. He said he was sorry, that this wasn't how he'd wanted to meet me, that he'd told his mom more than once she should just tell me and get it over with because secrets like that never stay secrets forever, not really. We didn't stay much longer after that. Camilla asked him if they could pick their conversation back up another day, and he said of course, and he left first, and it was just the 2 of us at a table with 2 coffees going cold between us. She didn't apologize to me in that coffee shop. I noticed that at the time, and I still notice it now. She said she was sorry I found out that way. But she didn't say she was sorry for keeping it from me, and when I brought that up in the car on the drive home, she said she wasn't sorry for protecting her son, only sorry for how much it had ended up costing the 2 of us. I told her about the phone. I hadn't planned to, but it felt wrong to let her think I'd figured all of it out some other, more innocent way, when the truth was I'd used her thumb while she was asleep to get into a phone that wasn't mine to open. That part made her angrier than anything else that day. She said whatever she'd done wrong, at least she hadn't gone through my phone or followed me across town. She said I'd turned her son's first real conversation with her husband into a scene in a public coffee shop full of strangers, instead of just asking her at home like a person who trusted his own wife. We've been sleeping in separate rooms for 2 weeks now. We have a first session booked with a counselor next Thursday, the first one either of us has ever been to. Webster's been over to the house twice since that day, both times with Camilla sitting close enough to him that I can tell she's still bracing for me to say the wrong thing. The second visit, he asked me how long I'd been doing electrical work, and we ended up talking for 20 minutes about wiring an old farmhouse his adoptive parents used to own, and for those 20 minutes, none of the rest of it was in the room with us. I keep going back and forth on which part of this I'm actually angriest about. That she kept a son from me for 4 months while we lived in the same house. That something I said 5 years ago at a bar made her afraid to trust me with the truth about her own life. That I went into her phone while she slept. That I followed her across town and confronted her in front of a 19-year-old meeting his mother's husband for the first time, in a room full of strangers, instead of just asking her at our own kitchen table. My mother says I should have just asked. Clovis says he never should have let me talk myself into checking her phone instead of talking to her. Camilla says I broke something that day that trust alone might not put back together, and I'm still not sure which part she means when she says it, the coffee shop, or the night before with her thumb on the lock screen, or both at once.